This episode of podcast is brought to you by making Frank come up with a podcast sponsor on the spot.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by having toes for fingers.
Ooh, good job. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Roll the Credits, the podcast, the only podcast that had their nose cut for half the episode. I'm Zach.
And I'm Frank.
This is just for the people that
Visually
watch us. They understand the joke. Yeah. I had a tissue over my nose.
Yes.
Today we are talking about Chinatown. First time watching it.
Roman Polanski's Chinatown.
First time watching it for me. Very intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into it. But Chinatown came out in 1974, directed by, like you said, Roman Polanski. You have Jack Nicholson in here, in his prime, I want to say, too, of like him just being like a leading man. He plays your main character of Jake Gittes. You have Faye Dunaway, who plays Evelyn. John Huston, who plays Noah Cross. Perry Lopez, who plays Lou, like the ex-partner of Jake. Darren Zwirling, who plays Hollis, kind of like the main reason why all of this is going on. And then Diane Ladd, who plays Ida Sessions. And if you don't know what Chinatown is about, it is a private detective hired to expose an adulterer in 1930s LA finds himself caught up in a web of deceit, corruption, and murder. Murder.
So, what are your thoughts on the first time viewing Chinatown?
What a good noir film.
Yeah.
It's like I've seen all these things where it's like people are like, it's the best noir film ever made.
Some people would say that it's the best movie ever made, period.
True. I don't think that that's fully up there. Like, it doesn't beat out stuff like The Godfather and Chicken Little. But like, but it's definitely up there, I want to say. My brother did mention something, though, that like I can't get out of my head, which is the fact that like Chinatown is just Who Framed Roger Rabbit without cartoons.
Yeah, no, they absolutely. I think I mentioned this in the Who Framed Roger Rabbit episode that it's very much like Chinatown.
Yeah.
They pretty much took Who Framed Roger Rabbit and inspired it by Chinatown. It's almost identical. I mean, literally, I watched it with my girlfriend, and the opening scene of him flipping through the photograph, she was like, "This is just like Roger Rabbit," and I didn't say anything about it, and she just immediately got it, and I was like, "Yeah, like Roger Rabbit was heavily inspired by this movie."
Yeah, and then even too like the whole thing of like, oh, I have to go back to my old place to finish the job, and it's like again, like you had to go back to like Toontown to finish everything out. So I get that.
Yeah.
That being said, though, I think this is a great movie.
It's very good.
Jack Nicholson is always surprising to me when he's not like a sociopath in movies.
Yeah.
So it's like this entire movie, I'm like watching him and like, he's trying to be charming, but like at one point I'm waiting for him to like snap at somebody.
And he just doesn't.
Yeah.
He pretty much is, he's like, it's kind of weird because, so this is like my third or fourth time watching Chinatown.
Mm-hmm.
Chinatown is... Jake is just like, he's kind of always here.
Yeah.
He never goes above or below it. And that always kind of frustrates me a little bit because the whole movie you're just being ran around the entire time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like personally, if it was me.
Yeah, you'd get pissed.
Like you start getting really annoyed of like, hey, can somebody just tell me the God's honest truth? Like, stop bullshitting me for 2 minutes and just tell me like what's really going on here. But he just never does that. He's just always level.
Yeah.
And that kind of frustrates me about his character is that I almost wish he loses his cool like one time just to like solidify that he's taking this as seriously as possible because
he's got a lot at stake in this.
He has and at the like when it comes down to it, everything that like he doesn't have like a moment of like real realization. I feel like where like I don't know. I guess he does at the end of the movie, but like. Everything in this movie, he's kind of like the catalyst for. Like, he's sort of like the reason why, spoiler alert, Evelyn gets killed at the end. He is
what?
He is the reason why she dies, essentially.
Yeah.
And he's the catalyst for so many issues in this in this film. And like I never feel like he always feels kind of he doesn't ever take like responsibility for that, which always kind of bothered me as well.
I get that because like again, I was watching like the entire thing and I'm like, man, like he gets into like fist fights with like a couple of people, but like and then even at like that great scene towards the end where it's like he's like slapping Evelyn.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that was this movie, by the way.
Yeah.
I've heard that like reference of like it's my sister, it's my daughter, it's
Yeah.
my sister and my daughter. It's like I've always heard that. Didn't know that this was this movie. But like even that, like he's not like aggressive. Like he's not like pissed off of like I need to know the truth. He's like slapping her with kind of like a laissez smile on his face. It's like like show a little bit. You were in The Shining. Show a little bit of craziness.
Yeah, it's that always bothered me a bit.
Mm-hmm.
People also say that it's kind of like everyone just kind of swears by this movie as being like the greatest thing that's ever existed because people will say if you don't think that it's the greatest movie ever made, fine, but you have to acknowledge that it's probably the greatest screenplay ever written. And
I've heard that too.
And
Back
I
and forth.
also kind of like am iffy on that as well, but I can understand at least like where they're coming from because I will say that this movie has no wasted scenes, wasted space. Every single thing that a character says is relevant.
Yeah, and that's actually really impressive for a film that like is almost 2.5 hours long.
Yeah,
because we've done movies that like are an hour and a half long and it's too long.
Yeah,
like everything is wasted in it.
Yeah,
so it's like for a movie that has this much runtime to have everything make sense and be needed is great. Like I was never once bored in this film.
No, and the acting is really good because you get moments of like Evelyn being questioned and then she like looks down and you can tell that she's lying about something. You can tell that she's not being totally truthful about it. And then obviously like the further the movie goes along, you start learning stuff. Like this movie absolutely benefits from multiple viewings because now you know like once you come to the end of the film and then you realize everything that's happened, you then go back and rewatch it and now you're like, oh okay, like this is where she's lying about this and like you can tell that she's uncomfortable here and whatever. And my only other issue with the movie is I feel like it's pretty simple to figure out like who the killer is. Like I don't think it's very difficult at all to find. Like, did you kind of like figure out who the killer was in the beginning, towards like the beginning? Because I feel like it's kind of laid out for you pretty simply.
I mean,
and then Jake is just like,
ooh, what?
Like he's and I do think that it comes back as like a metaphor and a theme throughout the film of like he just doesn't see things, like he's not seeing the things that are laid out right in front of him. And I think there's a lot of really good like visual things that they do with that and like visually show that, which is cool, and we'll unpack that. But I don't know, like as a first time viewer, I was like I knew who the killer was.
Yeah, I mean
of Hollis I'm talking about. The murder of Hollis. Like it's laid out pretty easily.
Yeah, like once it got to the point of like, oh, Noah and him were like business partners, I was kind of like, it's probably Noah.
Yeah, and like no, especially when he's like walking around the office and he and Jake is just like talking to the secretary and he's looking at the pictures and he's like they were business partners and she's like yes. And he's like, what happened? And then she's like, well, Jake wanted, or Hollis wanted the water to be owned by the people, and Noah wanted to own it himself by the state or whatever, the government, and like that's where they divided. It's like, yeah, no, all right, well then Noah's the killer. Like, he had so much to lose and so much to gain.
Yeah, like definitely, like it's kind of pinpointed out there for you. There was one scene that like I really just was like, not a good scene. Didn't like this. And it was actually really surprising for me because the director is like Roman Polanski as like the guy with the knife is so like blasé. Is like, you better stop sticking around here, or
he's got like a very weird, like you don't exactly know what he's playing because he's like he comes into the scene.
He's the tough guy, but he's like 5'1" to this 6'7" big man.
Yeah, and Jake like makes that joke. He's like, oh, he's like, oh, you finally got yourself a midget or something. You can't say that, but that's what he says in the movie.
It was a different time.
And then obviously Polanski, like, but even like Polanski acting as a tough guy like just doesn't work
because he's not a tough guy.
No, he's not a tough guy.
But yeah, that was like the one scene where I was like, man, like You directed this greatness, and you're gonna put yourself in this spot.
Yeah,
like you're the weakest link of this movie. Very weird.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's weird. It's always kind of like an uncomfortable kind of like scene that just feels a little out of place. But I mean, going back to like those metaphors and like those themes, like the cut on the nose
Very
is
cool.
is relevant
Yes.
too. Like it does make sense.
Yes, and I love the fact that like he's got this cut on his nose and he's got like the bandage on it like the entire movie, and then like as it gets like closer to the end, he takes it off and he's got like just the stitches, and like he just keeps getting like punched in the face and it's reopening.
He gets beat up the whole movie. Yeah.
Like my God, when he goes to the orchard and like his car is just fucked.
It's really funny too when he gets his nose cut and then you see him for the first time sitting in the office with the massive one, and then he's just sitting there and you're like, oh man, it's hysterical.
I know.
But I will say, listen, Roman Polanski, not a great guy. A lot of baggage and a lot of shit that went down, and we don't have to talk about it, but a really good director.
Yeah.
And like you can't take that away from him. No. The movie is so well directed and very I don't know how familiar you are with like 70s films. Like I don't know if you really watched a lot in your life, but like this movie is directed very differently than a lot of 70s films. And movies before it. Like this movie has a lot of handheld camera, a lot of like POVs and a lot of like tracking shots of over the shoulder looking at like what the character is seeing, and like that was very unusual for the time. That was not normal by any means.
Yeah.
And it adds so much to it though. Like it makes it feel like when you're following Jake and he's like walking up a hill or something, and then there becomes like something else. There's something in the foreground that is in focus, and you kind of have him a little bit blurred out in the main part of the screen.
Yeah,
like it's a great way of revealing things, and it's a great way of showcasing what he is visually seeing and how he's walking up on things. And like that just wasn't the traditional way of shooting back in those days. And a lot of handhelds of like just a guy just seeming like he's a cameraman in the backseat of a car just following them as he's driving around. And I think it adds so much, and it makes it feel so much like grittier, because this movie, while a noir, it doesn't really have like the grit of a noir.
Yeah.
It's a little like kind of clean.
Yeah, like it does feel like, especially too when you look at stuff where it's like Jake's like suits, like very vibrant, very like flamboyant, where it's like 9 times out of 10 noir films, like yes, they're usually like in black and white, but like the ones that are in color are like, oh, it's like pale like suits, like it's very like dark and gritty. Like yes, he has like that kind of like, he has that scar of like, oh, he got his nose hit, so like he's got the bandage over it, and then he's got like the scar from it, and it's like that's kind of like the grittiness of the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get it. Like this is very, very clean.
Yeah.
But that is like the biggest praise I have for this film is the camera work for this.
It's really good.
It's so good because it does kind of like go back to like the older style of noir films where it is like those POV shots. Like you're with Jake the entire time, and like that's what I love, is that like in a mystery you're solving the shit with him.
Yeah.
Like you're figuring out just as much as he is.
Right.
Rather than like, oh, it's like Jake's not in the scene and it's an off-camera shot of like Evelyn loading like a gun. Like it's okay, now I get like some suspicion.
Right.
No, it's like every single thing that you're picking up is with Jake.
It's great.
And I loved that. I think that was like the coolest thing for it. And I didn't even realize it too, but like Jake is actually in every single scene of this movie.
Yeah. Yep.
Like there is not one scene where he's not in it.
Yeah, I mean he is a PI. Like he is you're with the guy. Like this is what every Batman movie should be.
Exactly.
You know?
This is what Matt Reeves did right.
And it's just interesting because I mean there's a lot of, I'm not like super well versed in noir films. I don't really watch the most noir, us doing this podcast is like the year of the fucking noir films, because
we've been doing a lot
we've been doing a lot of them, and this is the most I've ever watched noir films in my life.
They're slowly starting to become like one of my favorite genres.
I like them. I feel like for me they're a genre that I can't watch too often because
you start to notice the cliches.
I wouldn't even say the cliches. I just get tired of them. Like, they need to be they have to be really, really good. And they have to have like a really, really interesting mystery where I am genuinely engaged in trying to figure out what the hell is going on. For them to like really hook me. I think Blade Runner 2049 is a really good noir.
That's a good one.
And I don't think it gets enough credit for being a noir.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people just view it as like the Blade
sci-fi.
Runner sequel, and it's like this sci-fi epic. And like, yes, it is, but it's a proper noir.
Yeah.
And
The original too was a proper noir.
yeah, and like genuinely invested as to what's going on. Not so much in the first one, but in the second one.
I still go back and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I love the first one, but like I can't bring myself to watch it.
So yeah, I mean, like it's really cool though to see these. The reason why I brought this all up was because I'm not super well versed in a lot of noir films, but you can tell that this movie was made in the 70s, takes place in like the 30s, and like it's filmed like a 30s noir, like those kind of like, it's kind of like tipping the hat to those old style classic movies. But it's really interesting and cool to see Polanski also take like the filmmaking techniques from that era and utilize them, because again, it was so different for that era. Like nobody was shooting like this anymore.
Yeah, like even to like the apple orchard scene or like orange grove scene, whatever.
Orange Grove, yeah.
Yeah. When Jake like gets there and like immediately like when the one guy on like the horse is like shooting at him and he has to like go into the groves, and like just where the camera sits like right over his shoulder in the car. That was the shot that I was like, man,
yeah,
so good.
Yeah, I thought I made the joke to my girl. I was like, I was like, what if this was like a Tropicana commercial? Like
fresh orange juice.
that would have been really like that would be a really good like meme if somebody just had like that whole scene play out and then everyone's beating them up and then right at the end they have them like this and it's just like Tropicana.
Get yourself a PI for this OJ.
Classic.
Yeah,
that'd be really good. So that was great. I think Faye Dunaway. She's really good.
I was trying to look up like anything else because she has that face where it's like I've seen her in something before, and like 90% of the stuff is like either romance or like noir films. Yeah, and I just have not seen her at all. So, but
you know the name though. I think you probably know the name.
Yeah, she has that face where I'm just like, man, like I've seen you in things.
Yeah. So her character's pretty good. I really like. She's got this classic like. This movie makes you actually. Ironically, we were talking about this before the podcast. This movie almost makes you like want to start smoking cigarettes. Yeah. Like this movie makes cigarettes seem like they taste so good.
Well, yeah. As a smoker, they do taste good. But like the old school like the cigarette boxes are what makes it cool. Yeah. Of like just the gold open, like taking it out of your jacket pocket. Yeah. And opening it up and
smacking it to wake up the cancer.
Oh,
and then
yes.
you
come on, get out of there. I only got 30 years left.
Oh, what is happening? We get new microphones and things just go off the rail.
Hey, check it out, new microphones. It's so slender.
Yeah. No, Faye Dunaway as Evelyn, I think does a really, really incredible job. Mm-hmm. The reveal of her daughter / sister, that is like the best.
That's like the aha moment in this film. And like it was weird because it's like at first I was like, what do you mean sister and daughter? Oh. And then it was like, oh, okay, got it. Yeah. Now we're getting into an R.
There's an R. Yeah. But it's really, really good. And I just love she's so different than Jake.
Yes.
The one thing I didn't buy was like when they have sex.
Yeah, I was
like,
yeah.
How did we get here?
You're cleaning his nose and then
just start randomly kissing, like,
and then it's like, and then she's like hooked, like, like she just lost her virginity to him. Like,
yeah, really, that didn't really work for me. But other than that, I think that their relationship is really good. I think that they balance each other really well, and I think that visually they're really they contrast each other really well. Where, you know, Jake, again, he's got like the cut on his nose. He's kind of like a little bit rougher, bloody. He's this PI, and then she's like this really wealthy woman who's always very clean. Like when she goes to the restaurant and she orders a Tom Holland, and like she's got that hat with like the what is that stuff? I don't know what that like kind of
It's like
a veil sort of, and like you're sitting there and you're like, man, this was really just a different era.
Yo, 30s fashion.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, and it's just different and cool and unique, and everything about her I think really works. I think she balances his character really well.
Yeah.
I can absolutely understand again why people think that this is like one of the best screenplays written.
Yeah, I can see, because again, like the majority of screen time is Jake and Evelyn.
Yeah.
And like the writing for it, and then the way that like that Faye and Jack Nicholson like deliver their lines, very well done.
Yeah.
Also funny thing too, I found out. So like at the time of like them shooting this film, Jack Nicholson was dating John Huston's daughter.
Ah.
So like that scene where it's like he's at like his like plantation basically.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Did you have sex with my daughter?" And it's like, kind of in real life. It was like a very awkward scene for both of them.
Yeah, I would imagine. And John Huston was like a noir, like he's like he was a big time actor or director, I think actually.
Yeah, I think he played a little bit of both.
And he was a big like catalyst for a lot of old school noirs, which is kind of like another cool like tip of the hat to like, you know, playing back to those old school noirs.
Yeah, there's a movie too, like Other Side. Oh fuck, what is it? It's like The Other Side of something.
The sequel, like the unloved sequel to this movie.
No.
Oh,
Is
okay.
there?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no. There's like a. It was Orson Welles' last movie. It was like The Other Side of something.
Okay.
And John Huston is like the main character in it, and it's on Netflix. I want to check it out.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, Orson Welles, you know, like this is like you just mentioned Orson Welles, and now I just like
Tangent.
sidetracked, but. You know, Orson Welles like kind of went down in history as saying that he doesn't want to be remembered as an actor, but he wants to be remembered as a magician.
Yes.
And I was like,
I do remember that.
that's weird.
And I was like, and I get it, because like his idea is like, oh, like I made magic on the screen.
No.
Oh, like actual
like he was he was really into magic.
Oh yeah.
What? Yeah. He was really into magic. And there's also some you got to watch like his drunk commercials and stuff when he's like, just hammered.
Well, there's that documentary that I was telling you about on Netflix about him and like how he just kind of like started to go insane.
Yeah.
And that's like the thing where it's like in that movie, The Other Side of Whatever, like he's like, oh, like pretend that there are like little people running around like in front of you, but we're not gonna get them. Just pretend, and we're gonna pan the camera up. And it's like, what the hell is going on, man?
Yeah.
And then there was that movie where it's like it was like F is for fake, something like that. Where it's like he just straight up lied to you immediately. He came out on the screen and he was like, "This movie is an hour and 30 minutes long, but the runtime is like 2.5 hours." Like fuck.
Orson classic, Welles. But Citizen Kane though.
Yeah. And the Muppets movie.
Yes. Yeah. Very much. Yeah. Anyway,
Chinatown.
So the red herring of the water.
Yeah.
Like the water is just doesn't really matter.
No, like it's not really like a catalyst that leads to anything, but like it leads Jack down like or Jake down like this rabbit hole.
It's a conspiracy. This movie was, I think, very much inspired by like these conspiracy theories and whatnot. And it's really interesting that he's pretty much trying to figure out this whole like water situation the entire movie, and it's just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
None of it matters.
Yeah, like even when he finds out like what's going on with it, it really could just be like they're just doing like runoff for it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't lead back to anything other than like, oh, Noah Cross is like the one that's like doing everything.
Right, yeah. And then, you know, the real aha moment is the thing that I always love is when he goes back to Hollis's house.
Yes, the salt water.
There's the salt water in the little pond there, but then they find the glasses, and then you're like, oh my God, she killed him.
Yeah, I know. That's what I thought too.
You know, and like that's really cool because it does
make sense.
It does, and it all sort of starts to work out in that way, and then you realize like, oh no, he doesn't even wear bifocals. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, fuck, okay.
Like, who could this be?
Yeah, that's really cool. Like that part of the movie's really great.
And I think that's like needed in like noir / like mystery films. Is like you
need to have twists and turns.
Yeah, like you need to have that where it's like you suspect somebody for like half the movie and then you're like, fuck, it's not them.
Yeah. It's It is great. It is absolutely great. And then of course you have the whole thing about that whole where he mishears the Asian man's
Yep.
accent. He thinks that he's saying bad for glass, but he's
Yeah.
actually saying bad for grass, and like
Yes.
that's how he finds out that it's salt water. Really cool stuff. Love that. Although it is kind of strange that like that whole man's job is
Just replanting that one.
well, like
little pond.
he's like whatever. He's like a gardener or whatever. And like he just never notices the glasses.
Yeah, right?
It's like you spend hours out there every day looking in this
Gardener,
pond.
he's responsible for the greenery, not the water, Frank.
I guess.
never has to look at the
he
water.
seems to spend a lot of time around that little pond there.
Yeah,
Though.
but he's just only staring at the patches of grass that he has to take out and put in.
All right, so let's talk about what one of my favorite things about this movie, which is the idea and like kind of like the visual cues of like one side being dirty, one side being clean, one eye being closed, one eye being opened. I really like that, where again things are kind of laid out right in front of Jake the whole movie, and he's just almost like refusing to see it. And you have that moment of finding the glasses, and the one frame is like broken, and the one side is clean. You have the one time where he like kicks out the headlight, breaks the one headlight's good. He gets cut on his face. One side of his face is clean, one side of his face is dirty, and whatnot. When Evelyn gets shot, her eye, I don't know if you noticed it, but when her body falls, her left eye, I think it is like that's where the bullet exits. So that part of her eye is missing, and then the other side is clean. All of that, I think, is really, really good storytelling visually, because that is like your metaphors of like, hey, there's so many ways. There's like multiple ways to interpret it. You could interpret it as like one eye, like you're kind of just like closing one eye, and you're not seeing the things that are right in front of you.
Yeah, that's how I saw it.
Yeah, there's the whole idea of conspiracy and these big guys, like the guys who have so much money, the 1%ers who own a lot of money, and people that work for them, and they kind of they're kind of like towing the line between people where it's like, hey, we're for the people, but then they're also taking like dirty money or whatever. So then you have like one eye being closed, one eye being opened. All of that stuff I think is really great.
Yeah, I mean, even to like the idea of like everyone's hiding something, like you could put that out too, where it's like there is a dirty side and then a clean side to it.
Yeah.
I also like the idea too, like the theme of this entire film is just like Jake is so like on it, like even like at the barber shop, whereas like I make an honest living, like I do honest work, and it's like you're kind of doing a little bit of like sleazy work, but like but the passion that he has for this, that like he is doing like an honest day's work, and the entire film he is trying to do like justice, whether it be like a dirty way or not, like him again turning that blind eye himself to the fact of like how he does things, because in his mind it's all just
right. But he's a fucking PI, like,
yeah,
and at the end of the day, you're pretty much always looking at people cheating on their husbands or wives. That's like 90% of what your job is.
Yeah, and like you're out there to like give back that information and be like, hey, look, she was cheating on you.
Yeah,
it's like it is a little bit of like sleazy work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like he's taking the pride in it, and like that idea of like trying to be an honest man making an honest living in like a dirty world.
Yeah.
Is that idea that like you have to turn that blind eye at some point to it. Like there is no black and white with it. It's only gray.
Right.
So I like that aspect of it. I think again, like that's what noir films do the best. And like this one, I would honestly say that like this and like Maltese Falcon are like two of the best like noir films out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you watched it.
Me too. Also, too, the shock value that I had when like Evelyn is trying to get away in Chinatown, and like I'm like, oh, she just made it, and then I see the car stop, and I only hear the horn.
Yeah. And
it takes me literally 3 seconds, and my brain is like, oh no, they shot her. They got her.
Yeah.
That was really good. Like I don't know if anybody else had that feeling of it, but that was like the moment where I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
It's over.
And then you have like one of the most kind of iconic lines at the end of a movie, like in all of film history, which is like, come on, Jake, it's Chinatown or whatever. Like, forget about it. It's Chinatown.
Yeah, being like, oh, it's just another day here.
Yeah.
It's like you could, again, that's the thing is like, you can do all these things, you can justify everything that you're doing, but at the end of the day,
It's Chinatown.
it's Chinatown. It's gonna go on either way.
Yeah. It's a very good movie.
Yeah,
I don't think it's the greatest movie ever made.
No.
I don't think that it's I think it's like top level noir film.
Yes, I think so too. Like it's definitely top 5 of noir films. I would say it's probably like top 100 films ever made.
Yeah. It's a very, very good movie. But I do think that there's minor issues here and there, of course. But, you know, at the end of the day, if you're somebody who absolutely loves noir films and you haven't seen Chinatown, like you need to watch Chinatown.
Yeah.
This is kind of like what people pinpoint as the best one. And you kind of every noir film post Chinatown has been inspired by Chinatown.
Exactly.
So
it gets 9 sheep stampedes out of 10.
yeah, I think a 9 out of 10 it's a very, very good noir film.
Yeah, like there are the minor issues, like you said, but like everything else just holds up.
And I kind of wish they filmed it in black and white almost.
Yeah.
It
would have been a little bit
It would
cool.
have just added like that little bit more.
Well, again, too, the whole smoking thing, like the wispiness of the smoke coming out would have been really fun to see.
Yeah, but you know, I'm sure there's a black and white version somewhere.
Oh, yeah. And if not, you can just make it.
Yeah.
You can just put like a black film over your TV.
So it's a very, very good noir film. Zach, you have a recommendation?
I do. I have a music recommendation. I wasn't planning on this one, but it just came out at the time of this recording. It came out like a week ago.
Okay.
And I'm actually a little bit blown away. Gorillaz came out with their 10th album, Cracker Island.
Yeah, I've heard pretty good things about it.
I kind of have been in this spot ever since like the hiatus of Gorillaz and then coming back where it's like one album is really good and the other one is not that good, and then like the other one is like okay, and then like the next one is like it's fine. This Cracker Island is like
the best thing
since... No. It's the best one since Plastic Beach to me. Like this album has such a Plastic Beach vibe of just like every single song is like catchy. It feels like old school Gorillaz. Like it feels like it's what Damon Albarn has been leading up to since like being gone for like those 5 years. And I think how like Gorillaz always have it too, where it's like they have like guest singers on it.
Yeah.
I think this is probably the best turnout that they've ever had. The amount of people on here, like it's literally Bad Bunny, Stevie Nicks, Tame Impala, Beck, Thundercat, some lady named Adelaide Omatayo. I've never heard of her. And Booty Brown. That's a really good ensemble of people. Like, not just to mention the fact that like I'm really into like Tame Impala, Thundercat, and then like Beck showing up was a big surprise.
Yeah,
I think you like Beck, don't you?
I like Beck. I'm not like the biggest Beck fan, but yeah.
What do you mean? There's a poster on in your car.
Tattoo.
Beck #1 fan. And then Stevie Nicks was like a big surprise for me too. Like I think that was like really, really cool to get her on there.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably the best that they've done ever in terms of like guest spots on it.
Yeah.
And then the album itself just feels like an old school Gorillaz album, and that's like what I've kind of been wanting since they came back.
Well, that's good. I'm not a huge Gorillaz fan. I don't really love Plastic Beach as much as everybody else seems to really appreciate it, and I don't know, it's just not. I guess it's just not my genre of music, really.
Yeah, I mean, Plastic Beach is probably my favorite album, but like a lot of people swear by like their first album and then like Demon Days.
Yeah.
Like those are like the albums if you want to get into Gorillaz.
Yeah.
But like again, Gorillaz always has like that kind of feel where it's like you listen to a song and you're like, oh, that's all right, and then like you go back to it and you're like, oh my god, I fucking love this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Kind of like I think with you with like Radiohead.
I pretty much love everything that Tom York does.
Oh, okay.
So I just pretty much I'm like, yeah, no, it's great. I don't even like need to listen to it. I'm like, no, I love it. Yeah. Moonshine Pool, man.
So yeah, Gorillaz, Cracker Island. Frank, what are we doing next?
So normally when it bounces back to me after you do a movie review, I get a film topic. So normally I would choose something like the best fingernails in movies.
Ah, that's a good one. We should do that.
But I recently watched Skinamarink,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to discuss Skinamarink. I didn't want to wait till next week to
Yeah.
do it because I watched it. It's on my brain, and I want to discuss it.
Okay, cool.
So we are going to talk about 2023's
Yes.
Skinamarink.
Nice.
Look forward to that. Zach, take us out.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Now, forget it, Frank. It's Chinatown.